Okay, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursalin Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. So today, inshallah, we'll just have more of a discussion and try to bring about some of the general comments or some things that we feel that, these are important in this topic of Tijarah, commerce, and anything to do with trade. So, So there was recently a nice little khutbah that I saw. This is done here in Nur-e-Islam Masjid. I was there for a khutbah that Imam Shiraz did in the masjid. I don't know how many of you all were there. But in the khutbah, he was talking about aspects of Islamic banking, of riba, and about the detrimental effect of riba in our society. And talking about the Muslims need to come together and start up something or do something that will help and benefit the Muslim population, something like Muslim bank or some credit union or something. And we do have or had some type of initiative towards this direction, mashallah, from before for those people who saw the need to do that. But it's not anywhere close to being complete, nor is it something that is actively being pursued now. There are the two little initiatives, but in itself, it's not really it doesn't fulfill the needs of the community and the Muslim community, and that free or ethical banking, as it's called in different parts of the world as well, try to come away from, you know, Islamicizing the banking industry too much and not making it sound too, you know, religious, because there are other faiths obviously that require them, to not deal with interest and to stay away from riba. So this is even found in some of the other faiths, and there are some actually practicing people of different faiths that stay away from interest. So it's something that is quite interesting to see, something that is of importance to us as well as believers as well. Anyway, what I was thinking is there anything you guys want to bring up so we can discuss a little bit? Now it's time for you all to talk, inshallah. I think I talked enough. Anything you all found that we should have spoke about in sessions before? Haven't seen anybody saying anything. There's a really nice hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when it comes to trade, not trade, ilm and knowledge, to seek knowledge, right? Um, he talks about su'alu nisful ilm, that questioning is half of knowledge. Now, when you think about that concept of questioning the half of knowledge, what does that mean? It means that knowledge itself is really transferred by inquisitiveness, talab. This is why in Islam it's actually called, or as in Arabic, for example, Arabic really, it's called talibul ilm, the seeker of knowledge. So a student is called talibul ilm, the one who seeks knowledge. So seeker means someone who is not just actively a learner. A learner, maybe a learner might be actually a transitive verb as well, but a seeker is someone who looks and go search and go try to find and try to hunt and make sure he puts in effort to teach. He looks for things. He looks for information and so on. So this is the active word used for student. He is actively looking, and when you say talibul ilm, is actually the continuous, ongoing seeker of knowledge. This is why even when a person graduates and becomes maybe an alim, a knowledgeable person, someone who is considered knowledgeable. This is the literal meaning of an alim, one who holds knowledge, a knowledgeable person, alim, right? They still refer to themselves, or Adam will still refer to himself as a talibul ilm because he's consistently having to seek knowledge anyway. When he becomes an Adam, so he's now already stopping that process of learning because when you become an Adam as well, you only just cover the basics of how to seek ilm, how to seek knowledge, and actual knowledge is sought throughout the entire life. Alhamdulillah. So anyway, what I was saying is, talibul ilm is the way that they refer to someone who seeks knowledge, and that is essentially why the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that as-su'alu nisful ilm, that seeking knowledge is half of ilm and half of seeking of learning, because what happens is when you ask a question and when questions arise in your mind, you have to find the solution, you have to find the answer to the questions that you may have. And in that process, you keep seeking, you keep gaining more knowledge. So that's why in methodology of teaching, this is a very impactful way to disperse knowledge, to create questions in the minds of the students so that they can now go and look for the answers. This is why in some of the previous madaris, you know how you used to teach knowledge, and ulum, they would actually tell them that they have to research topics, come back and teach the entire class. That is the job of the student. The teacher is just there to guide the seeking of knowledge or to ensure that, when they are seeking knowledge, they're seeking it in the right direction. The point I'm making is, many of the great personalities who have invented solutions for the Muslim world as well is because they sought to find what are the solutions available and are not available for the Muslims, and then they would try to create that availability. So the point I'm making is one of the things that he said in the khutbah is that we need to create systems. And I think the most maybe deserving or the most interested people to create solutions is this group here. The ones who came to the class for Tijarah and business, business ethics in Islam, or Muslim business ethics. So tell me, you all ready for that challenge? Anyway, one of the things, just a few days ago, I was talking to a senior engineer that works for a big oil company. He was saying how demanding his job is, that, when he has to go out, hours and end and a high performance that is required from him because the industry is such that, you have to perform really good. And yeah, you do get a lot of training in proper good management and the amount of output you have to put in as a person and so on. That helps a person to develop himself. But I said to him, I said, is that the life you want to live for the rest of your time? Is that something that you feel from a earnings perspective, from a livelihood perspective? Is that something that you're comfortable with living like that and working for others in that type of demanding atmosphere? And he said, no, I wouldn't like to. So I said, well, then start planning to open up your own business. And I think that's a conversation that many people don't have. They don't even think about it, consider that even if you're working for someone else, start preparing and building yourself to a capacity that you can open up your own, or you can create some type of niche or some type of interest that people can then pay for, and then you will, inshallah, use that as a means of earning. And this is something that each one of you all, alhamdulillah, is able to do. Create, inshallah, yourselves that opportunity of
Weekend.
of,
Right.
right? And doing that, inshallah, will give you that what I'm talking about here on this screen here. One of the biggest things is the flexibility in business. You're able to perform your ibadah according to your own terms, meaning terms of not the dunya or not your employers and so on, according to your terms between you and Allah. So you can choose accordingly. Some people have no choice. Their day goes in fully, and that's it. Their day and their time is only dedicated towards their livelihood on a daily basis. And little once a day, once a week, very little they spend time in serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or even doing the daily ibadah that they should be doing on a daily basis. Second thing is that they sacrifice a lot of their family time. So what they do to compensate for the time that they don't get to spend with their family, they take it away from Allah. They take it away from their ibadah. They take it away from their daily routines and their adhkar and the different ibadah that they're supposed to do. Like, for example, the men are supposed to be praying salah in masjid. There's no two ways about it. Once you have the ability and you can, you have to go. There's no choice in that matter, but yet, you're sometimes humanly tired, you're frustrated, you're overworked. So you pray at home, but the reality is you're supposed to go out and you're supposed to pray. If you're unable to, Allahu Alam, He's most forgiving, and inshallah it will be understood according to the situation. But do you want to live your life such that you have to always sacrifice one or the other? No, it's not generally something that somebody likes. The third main thing, and this is, I just wanted to highlight this really, is this today is supposed to be a discussion. I haven't seen anybody discussing anything, but the third thing that I find is very, very powerful for an entrepreneur, a Muslim businessman, is that he's able to give back. He's able to take something out of his own earnings and say, you know what, this is for fi sabilillah. This is for the sake of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. This is for the family, for that family. You're able to go and do things for others and help them accordingly, and encouraging a social responsibility. So this is why we need plenty really good, successful businessmen. We need plenty of them in Ummah, those who are practicing Muslims, who are, understanding their responsibility. If there was something I can create for people, I mean, like a massive group, or even, mashallah, a small group, a few people here today, right? Today is they probably a rainy day or something. I don't know, but like if I could have gotten a small group of 10 people, 7 people, 5 people who are devoted believers towards the cause of Islam through business, then I would do this. This is something that's very, very powerful, because the more people understand their duty to Islam and to the society, to the fellow Muslims, then inshallah that will become a means of barakah, goodness for community, and it will keep building and rising, inshallah. So Islam has a very strong connection to financial responsibility, right? We undermine it, but it's something that's very, very important. And how much can you stress of it? Because there's a whole entire ibadah that is on financial abilities, spending your zakah, and Hajj. Hajj is actually partial a financial responsibility, as well as a badani, a physical responsibility. But zakat is financial, and that's why there's so many different ibadah of spending that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed this as part of and parcel of your worship and your submission to Him and your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would talk about financial matters. He would talk about zakah. He would talk about giving. He would tell someone, if they're being stingy and they're not supporting, and he would make open declarations of the need for financing and for money and for supporting the causes. And mashallah, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they were naturally very, very generous people. So those are some of the attributes or the sifat or the qualities that we have to have as believers as well, understanding our financial responsibilities. So when it comes to things like sadaqah, zakah, lillah, given for lillah, for building and these kind of things, given in things like fidya, given sadaqah wajibah. There's a little article actually I wrote. I wonder if I can find it. Let's see. There's an article that I wrote that was on the different types of spendings or ibarat of spending, but the different types, different names in Islam. I don't know if I still have it here. I did put it up on the website, but then the website needs a little bit of work. So sometimes it goes down and it goes up. And I think it is missing a few little things here, but the article itself is pretty okay. I'll send it to you guys too. All right, so what I'm saying is there any questions that you all would like to ask or discuss? I want here now some feedback. I've spoken enough.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Okay. Question. Assuming you come to me and you want to buy a stove, and the stove is $8,000, and I tell you, okay, I will sell you the stove for $8,800, and you said you will pay me over 1 year's time, which we agree on, right? So I buy the stove and you pay me the 800 over the year, and that's fine, and there's no problem with that, okay? Now, if on the other hand I say, okay, fine, I'll give you the $800, you buy the stove and you're paying back over a year's time, what's the difference?
So the thing about the time, so the scenario is one is that you just tell me the difference in the scenario, please. I'm not capturing that.
Okay, in the first scenario, I am buying the stove and physically buying the stove and selling it to you for 800. In the second scenario, I'm giving you $800. Like, go ahead and buy the stove and you'll pay me same agreement over the 1 year time, with the 800.
Okay, so I mean, both things are essentially a little difference in the way that is carried out. Both of them can be fine. Both of them is allowed as well. If you give someone $8,800 and you tell them go and buy the stove for themselves and they pay me back, so there in that sense, you are no $8,000 is saying, and then they pay back 8,800 because
8,800, correct.
the time.
8,800, right.
Right. And the other way is that you are buying it for the same amount, and basically you buy it and you sell them back for 8,800.
Right, yeah.
So essentially, I mean, in a Sharia compliant transaction, both can be done once you set the terms or the conditions of it. Now, if you were to just state that, for example, you're giving them the actual task of buying it for you, they could just become your representative of buying. Essentially, you're still selling them, and you're selling them for a time frame, also over a period of time. So that's okay. And if you buy it, obviously, you're just selling them an item that is yours. And the first scenario is just that you're asking them to buy it for you and then pay back for it over time. So once the linguistics is okay, then there's no major issues to it. And once the contract is understood, like for example, it's a murabaha. I'm buying this for this much. I'm selling you for that much. You don't have to even literally say that to them. Once you acknowledge the transaction according to what was the cost price and how much is the selling price, and you make that clear, then they're fine. There's no issues there.
All right. The other question is, assuming I have two old generators, all right, and you have one better quality generator, all right, and we agree that your better quality generator is the same value as my two generator. Can we exchange, and is that okay?
So there's majorly two opinions on that, right? One is that some of the scholars have said that the practice that the Prophet ﷺ established when he said um, he called out a few categories of things, and he said it is basically dates for dates, greens for greens, that kind of thing, right? Based on that, everything that you so there's two opinions saying that based on that, other items that you're exchanging the same thing for the same thing. Once it's the same method or the same kind of items, the same category of items, then you should not do it like a 2-to-1, but you should put a third item in place, like money, and say, okay, well, here, take this for this amount, take that for that amount, and then you exchange it like that through money, through a means, or some kind of third item. The other opinion is that no, those things are specific to those items that the Prophet called out, and it's not to every other item, right? And this is the more this is the more practiced opinion. This is the one that you would take, is that it's only on those items. So in items like generators, for example, if there's a clear difference in the value of one item, you can trade for one for the other. So that's what we call a bartering system, and you could trade one for the other.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Right. So I think there's Abdullah. Your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to um, continue the conversation what we started with from even when Imam was talking on Friday with the banking system, right? And he gave the same example that you had given previously with Suriname and stuff like that. And even here with the Muslim Credit Union, they did it for smaller things, like even for cars and smaller type loans. But I just wanted to kind of go more in depth into that and understanding, even for larger amounts. So say whether it's house or construction or things like that. How is that system? So if you have to say buy land or even construct, how do you set up that? Do you agree that okay, if the whole house is costing 100,000 just to construct, just to an example? How do you agree? You agree with the financial institution that okay, we're gonna repay 150,000 over 10 years or what? How do you set up that for that
So the banking system for these kind of purchases, like big purchases, mortgages, and these kind of things for houses, is what you would call a diminishing musharaka. A diminishing musharaka is where you still try to put a down payment towards the house, right? So a good example is a house, and you buy part of the house, and then eventually what you do is you make payments every month towards the other part of the house which you don't own, which the bank owns. So there's a share and a split of the ownership of that item, where they own a part of the house and you own a part of the house. And every month that you put you are paying back part of what you of what they own, and you are owning that part afterwards, essentially. So it's broken up on a certain amount of years, and obviously with a profit to the bank, so that the bank can then obviously have income coming in, so that they can repay or do other projects like this. So that's what you could call a diminishing musharaka, and this is the model that has been used in Islamic banking systems conventionally to allow full profit or making for a bank and for a financial institution, so that they can continue that process. So locally here we don't have much of those. I've always spoken to developers and people who would be interested in these kind of things, but for them obviously it's not financially viable. You really do need a bank who wants to do that kind of system, because what banking do does what it does is that it's regulated by the central bank, and for that type of regulation, regularization, it's something that needs to come from a governmental perspective. So the bank obviously what it does is that it holds certain maybe sukuk bonds or something that they can use as a so the central bank becomes a guarantor to banks, and to get that kind of system in place you need to have political willpower to actually have it happen. So you can't just say, hey, I'm setting up a bank and I'll be able to lend money and so on. So it comes with Securities Commission and so on, overlooking some of the practices of the banks, and there's a regular taking a what I'm looking for, that creates that allowance for banks to be lending and trading accordingly.
But how in terms of Islamic perspective, even like in Suriname, whatever, I'm not sure the scale over there, but how do you calculate? So say for instance, just any normal Western world where they use interest. So they base the loans based on a interest rate of whatever, right?
Yeah, LIBOR, yeah.
How does that work? Is it that you just agree to upon a figure that you're going to pay back to, or how do you arrive at that figure?
Right. So for banks, and for someone who's lending, right, reality is that you can put a figure according to what you see or what you deem appropriate, right? In fact, sometimes people would say, and it is a reality, sometimes doing the halal thing is more expensive, because putting up higher percentages to halal perspectives, because obviously it's not as big, so there's more charges, there's more costing to running these services. So sometimes instead of paying back, for example, if a bank is mortgages is like 10%, in Islamic banking you might have to pay 15% and 20%. So it's more. Obviously people understanding the basis of it, you understand why it becomes more, and that one is riba and one is not riba, so that's why it would cost more. 20% markup on a house, for example, it's a substantial amount. So that being said, there are interest rates that generally are regulated in the country, because interest rates is something that they play and they manipulate as well. And that's one of the big problems that you do face in the conventional systems as well. That's why you have inflation and so on. And a lot of it is controlled by this interest rate. So even some banks, what they do, Islamic banks, they do try to match the type of interest rate so that it's not higher than a normal conventional system. So they try to peg it with that interest amount, so that if, for example, if it's a 7%, then they'll say, okay, 7% markup, this is what we're doing. Again, sometimes you might feel defeats the purpose, but the reality is that they're just trying to be competitive, that someone takes the halal financing as opposed to the riba-based financing. And a lot of times it just straight up goes to your iman. Are you comfortable with doing something that is completely haram, or are you willing to do the halal option that might be sometimes uh, similar or even costing more? Did that answer what you were talking about?
Yeah, so what I got in is that yeah, so basically how they're using interest and compound interest and they're going like that. you're using a markup scheme rather than just a compound interest. From what
Yeah,
I
so it's the LIBOR interest rates. It's actually that's more in England, and but I mean it's the same concept. It's an interest rate that the country is really pegged most of its transactions around a benchmark interest rates at which major global banks lend to one another in an international interbank market for short-term loans.
And then if you take out a halal loan, right, or in this form or this method, and you pass away, how is that treated? Because
So I was just actually doing something recently on the so anyone who owes money or has a loan must repay their loan in Islam. So that's one of the things I did talk a little bit about in one of the sessions, and that if it is that he has a loan, he has to put that in his wasiya, in his will, basically, right? That so and so person is owed. This is the amount that I owe them, and make sure and take this out of my estate. So estates must fulfill the debts of the person who would be borrowing accordingly. So it's still repaid, it still must be repaid, and is the responsibility of the heirs to first pay that as the first payment before even the payments of the funeral and so on. And that's why the whole concept of there is that if a person is owing money, then his janazah can be stopped until that payment is made. That's how serious it is.
and just one more thing is, I'm guessing if you were getting this method where you the markup for some reason, if you want to purchase something, whatever the case is it that it's okay to take it from a non-Muslim if they agree to the non-interest based way as well?
You repeat that, meaning that the non-Muslim takes the interest?
No, meaning that supposing that you are taking the loan with the non-riba loan, where you agree to a specific markup, okay, also do it with non-Muslims.
If it's okay to do with non-Muslims, yes, that's fine. That part of trading it is not limited to Muslims or non-Muslims. You can trade with anybody, anyone, and you can make these deals accordingly. So if you give them markups or if they give you markups and these kind of things, if Islam, if these kind of this system was just basically principles of godly transactions, right? Islamic transactions is Allah's way of how you should transact. It would help the entire world's economy. The economy right now in the entire world. If you look at some of these news on financial news, right, and you see how the things like countries are being overtaken by the things like the IMF and so on, the political change, the stabilities of countries, the things like the national debt to a country, national debt to places like America and so on. Everything is based on this riba based. And if those things, if their systems were to fall, everything falls. The whole entire world falls in financially. And that's really, really catastrophic. And it's just a matter of time really when that happens, unless they switch some of these systems. And they all economists and all people, they understand the nature of how the system is rigged, because it's not even based on actual tangible assets, but it's based on um, not actually spending on things that you have and based on certain. But the point is that if you could understand the financial system, economic systems, you can actually make and create solid practices that helps entire societies, and if people can then take that as their way of doing it, you generate, because now that's why in Islam we've done some of those things, right? In topics, it's going to be a lot of partnerships happening. People have to work, people have to earn, people have to do the hard way. There's no get rich gimmicks and get rich Ponzi schemes and so on. It's about working hard, and it's about partnerships with communities, partnerships with different types of levels of entrepreneurs, beginner entrepreneurs, those who are seasoned entrepreneurs, different types of levels that you would engage with, and that's how you have a lot more engagement with society when it comes to trade, because everybody's now working towards this goal of becoming economic strong society. On the messages just now, I'm just trying to capture some of these things. Can you review the general guidance on navigating person banking norms in Western banking, such as Trinidad, with regard to things like interest auto paid by banks to bank accounts, interest on loans by the bank for personal loans? So one of the things you can do is just tell the bank, go to them a few times and tell them you don't want interest in your account, right? They won't give you interest. Some of them just take it off from you, and they understand too that Muslim customers are not gonna want interest in their account, and some of them do actually take it out of your account. The other thing that you do is you take out the interest if you see it and you give it away. Now the thing about fiat currency, right, is that reality is that there's no one actual dollar. So like if somebody hand you off a dollar, that dollar and the dollar in the bank is not represented by the same actual physical dollar, right? So what you have in your bank is you can represent it into another way. For example, if you transfer it, if you withdraw a dollar, the value of it is really what you're taking out. So take out that value and you give it out to persons. The people who you give interest money to is the same recipients of zakat. So those people who are poor, who are destitute, who don't have anything, give it to them. That's what the ulama have given fatwa for. And so the ruling is that you give those types of people just like you would give zakat recipients, but it should not be a zakat recipient that benefits you directly. It should be someone who has no major connection with you, or whatever they use from the money that you give them for interest. It goes towards them that does not have a benefit to you. So, for example, you give somebody who's close to you, and then they cook, buy food with it, and they cook the food and they serve you the food. So you should not have any benefit whatsoever coming from that interest money. So that's what you do with interest money that comes into the system, and definitely something that you have to always be mindful of giving out sadaqat and so on based on interest. So Muslim practicing societies, what they do is they just take out that interest periodically and they just give it away. All right. Can you review the general guidelines for navigating personal bank? Okay, let me just say that. To include, can you review and advise if this statement is fully correct? Okay, let's look at the statement. What do you do with bank interest? Interest scholars have given fatwa that interest money paid by banks should be withdrawn and given to some charitable purpose, right? So it's kind of like what I just said. One should not use it for one's own expenses and should not be considered payment of one's zakat here. So this is a very important part here, that don't consider it a charitable act that you're doing when you take out your interest money, right? So you're not getting a reward for it. You just have to do it, right? You're not getting, don't feel yourself to be such a good act of piety that you just took out money and you gave it. No, that is not your money, right? That is interest money. That is somebody else's money, and you're just getting it out of your account so it doesn't affect you spiritually and also generally. One is allowed to give charity out of the bank interest, but not rewarded as it is an act of charity. Rather, one will be rewarded, inshallah, for an act of repentance, yes, and for cleansing one's money from haram sources. So you're doing a good action and fulfilling Allah's commands, that this is what essentially you get reward for. But it's owned by the peer, but since the peer is at the bank who gives us. So yeah, so basically what you were saying in that clip that you sent there, but in the email is correct. I got another message here that says, Assalamu alaikum. I do not have anything to ask or add, but I hope this course will be redone next year and advertised extensively so many others will benefit as well locally, maybe Caribbean wise. Can you go through some types of businesses that may be beneficial in our present society at times available? Okay, yes, very good. Inshallah, we have to continue that conversation of business. I think really and truly, sometimes when I have conversations with people, sometimes just people are not even considered. And I do commend all of you and thank you all, alhamdulillah, jazakumullah, and shukran lakum, that you came out for this course, right? Because any type of discussion around this is going to be beneficial, inshallah. You do have, businessmen, you have major businessmen, you have all kind of people that did not take time to realize or to think what are some of the essential practices as a business person I should be maintaining, or what are the things, or what are the hurdles, what are the principles, what are the limitations that I have as a business person. So that itself is something that's really important, and we should continue making people aware of it. As I said, your wealth and the way that you utilize your wealth is a big part of your ibadah, and a big part that you have to practice correctly. Do that, inshallah, will become a very big ibadah and a very big benefit for you, yourself, your akhirah, your family, and all those things. Other than that, types of businesses that you can make go in that might be beneficial. I would say business is something too that you do have to have a skill set, a passion, and ability. A lot of times it's about solving a need that people have, and then they pay for the need without any thought or any hesitation whatsoever. It should be something that is ethically and morally upright, and something that is beneficial to people, and not something that's harming society. So we spoke about some of those things, but there's no one type of business that is the right business as a Muslim. It's open really. Trading was one of the practices of the Sahaba, right? And they would practice a lot, and they would trade, and they were from amongst the traders. So buying and selling is a very powerful way of doing business. Even manufacturing and building things. So sisters as well. I've seen people who have things like a simple thing. I mean, as a small business, things like cake baking and so on. And mashallah, they do very well in being able to do that. But you have to be good, right? Nobody wants to eat a cake that is not tasting good. Similarly, like you're doing a job, for example, you're a painter and you paint auto cars, and you don't do a good job, then you don't want that service. So it's not about being Muslim that you'll get support. It's about being good and following the ethics of Islam that makes a business successful. So that's something that you have to always separate. That it's not about I have this label or this badge called Muslim, so that means that I am supposed to, or I am deserving of certain privileges in the Muslim community. It's not only about that. Yes, someone would prefer someone who's closer to them, a brother, a sister, and support that brother and sister, and see that person thrive and become a great and a productive business person. That should be the attitude, yes. But at the same time, you have to provide a product that is good, that is compatible, it is competitive to what is offered in the society. In fact, it should be better than what is offered outside there, and you should be very clear, distinct, very open about the business transaction, and what are the limitations to what you're selling. So this is something that is a general practice. I think we did cover some of those things in the course, inshallah. Anybody else wants to bring up anything else? I think it's always good, like if people are interested in trying our business, you always start and you start small, but when there's a certain point that you reach, you have to leap from that level to the next level, and you have to give up, what is holding you back. So that's something that is be a little balancing act for a lot of people. But mashallah, people do it, and alhamdulillah, become successful. You trust in Allah, and you work hard. That's essentially what's happening. You have to work hard towards it, and inshallah, Allah will put barakah. Every single business takes a time to mature. It doesn't just happen where you go into business and you're doing something and all of a sudden, it works. You have to keep working it and trying and striving and toiling, because they say that if everything was easy, then everybody would have everything, right? But you have to try, attempt to do things for really good period to make sure that it then becomes established, and inshallah then you will see the barakah and the goodness of it. So sometimes a bit of struggling and difficulty.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Question is, it seems today that there are a lot of business going on in this country with sale of US dollars. Some people sell it for $7.50, some for $8, some for $8.50, as the case may be. What is the Islamic position on something like that?
I mean, Islamically, there's nothing wrong in trading money. Foreign currencies are considered a commodity, so buying and selling commodities. Now, in Islam, there's something on sarf itself, or buying money for money, has to be equal, right? So that's one of the things that Prophet Hassan mentioned, and that's one of the things that is maintained. That if you're buying TT dollars for TT dollars, then you have to maintain the same amount, the same value on when you're selling, right? So you can't buy like a old $100 bill, you know, those antique $100 bills, and you're paying $200, $300, $500 for it, for that bill, because that is the same value essentially in Islam. We have to buy money for money, same thing. But when it comes to another currency, it's actually considered a commodity. So commodity for commodity. So you can buy US for TT dollars and TT dollars. So US dollars, and it's fine. It's just trading commodities. So if that's a question, then that's certainly allowed, and you can buy and sell. We have to do that. Secondly, are you talking about? I saw the article today. I don't know if you all saw it, where the central bank was saying that it's illegal to do that. If you're talking about that part of it, I can't really comment openly, but the reality is that it is an oppressive system when you limit the trading and you make things difficult for traders. You remember, from the time you stifle traders in the work that they do, you affect the trade and you affect economy, you affect buying and selling. So it makes it a massive upset to everybody's lives. It's not just one person. Everybody in Trinidad right now goes through that. All the traders, for example, the importers and stuff. So that in itself, you would look at it from that perspective, where it may be illegal, but even look at the earth. And there's a qaida, or there's a principle in usul fiqh, right? Al-adatu muhkama, that the general practice of the people, once it's not something that is completely erroneous or something that is against Sharia per se, muhkama, it actually commands the law. So in Islamic Sharia law, if something is a common practice or something that somebody does, and it's normal practice in their society to do so, then this is allowed in Sharia. Once it's not abrogating and going against Sharia, direct Sharia laws. So in trading US, yeah, it's allowed. That's putting it the fatwa, it's allowed. The fatwa is allowed.
There are lots of businesses all over where you can walk in and purchase something and they have signs up. You know, US dollar bought here for $7.50, $8. Even with the ad you spoke about, the government is not doing anything about that anyway.
Not
You know?
going to do. They can't,
So,
because that's how business. In fact, I would be, I mean, I probably wouldn't be wrong by saying more than half of the business is done, as you would say on the technical terms, on the black market, right? Because it's not through the conventional banking system, which what they would consider as per law, and they understand that, they know that, and they can't stop that. So yes, you're saying, sorry, something, sorry.
yeah, no, but that's basically okay. Just like
Yeah, and you can pay with US, you can buy US. In fact, if anybody have US to sell, I'm buying as well. Inshallah. I mean, it is something that we need, and traveling, it is a necessity.
In terms of zakah in business, so when you're talking about one of the situations where you have investors, like you're talking about bringing down the dates in container and stuff like that, where one person might be able to fund it and then the next person selling it, things like that. But if I'm not mistaken, in zakah in business, you have to pay zakah on your stock or on your item.
Yeah, so that's the thing about it. When you do transactions, then that's an interesting topic that we should have probably just touched on. But zakah of business. Now, zakah of business essentially is just basically zakah of who owns what. Because there is zakah on the ownership that you may hold as a person, but a business is not a real entity, though it's a legal entity. It must be owned by someone. Like, where does the money go? Where does it thing? So whoever is the general owners of it, it would come out of their asset base of whether they have to pay zakat or not, and these kind of things. So sometimes, for example, on things like manufacturing equipment and so on, that's not zakatable because that's part of your capital, Islamic capital requirements, which is not zakatable. But if it's the trade in stock, as you were saying, yes, you'll have to pay on that. So, for example, if there are investors that are putting towards something, who owns what is always essentially marked or understood. If it's owned by me, but there's investors that are putting their money towards the container, then the return of what the person is expected is generally what they will be looking at. And that's why partly there's something that's very important in zakat is that there's a zakat date that you look at. So it's not like all ongoing transactions all the time. You have to keep calculating for your zakat and checking to see if you have to pay zakat on each and every transaction every month and these kind of things. The way that you check your zakat is once a year. So it's that once a year because you can make a hard stop and you say, okay, this is owed to me, this is what I have, this is how much I'm owing, and then you make a line there and then you start calculating on that line. Right, but that's important, and that's why things like dead stock and thing, you need to get it out or sell it out or give it out, but don't keep it. Did I talk about zakat on? Well, we would do a zakat workshop. So all of you all here, inshallah, we would do a zakat workshop, and there's a part on around business assets and so on, how to calculate it and so on. So if you, I can't recall if I did cover that, but if we didn't cover it, we will be covering it in a course before Ramadan and probably into Ramadan as well. There'll be like a 1-2 day zakat workshop, so you can look out for that as well, inshallah, and try to cover that. Anyway, this is our last class. We're not going to have any classes after this, inshallah. So we'll end on this last day as being the final class. Again, we need to continue this conversation and inshallah increase the knowledge about trading and so on. I will continue as sister suggested as well that we would have to have other sessions and follow-up sessions as well in this, like next year, inshallah, because it's something that's really important to continuously talk about. It's I do try to touch on certain topics when I do workshops or classes like these. I try to do certain topics where you don't get that type of information much, or it's not gone into with a series of topics, because you might hear about it and remember, but you don't get to discuss anything else and so on. So I do topics like that. So I try to do some of them, tazkiyah, and we did Islamic methodology of teaching, and business and these kind of topics. So if there's anything that you all can suggest as well, please do so. So we can go into the topic and try to like break it down a little bit, make it as practical as possible so that everybody benefits, inshallah. Jazakumullah, and forgive me if I did not give the due that I should have. Inshallah, we will continue improving ourselves on what we offer, inshallah. I ask you for your du'as that that Allah accepts the little humble effort that we will have put out and that you will have made as well, that you increase your goodness, and that the institute here, the masjid here, inshallah, we are always in need of your support, whether it be physically by du'as, first of all by du'as, physically, by donations as well, whatever you can give, whatever you can support, however you can support. We want to create a strong Muslim society, inshallah. So we want to continuously do that. So whenever you feel the need to reach out to us and see if you can join on, be part of the institute, be part of the activities, whatever you can support, because each person have a strength and ability, and we would definitely love to benefit from that ability in some form, in some way, so that we can become a strong, ideal Muslim society. Right? May Allah accept and forgive us and grant us Jannatul Firdaus, accept your families, bring barakah to your families, take away any kind of difficulties that you're facing, any type of hardships, any type of struggles, and may Allah make ease come to you, all of your halal desires and wants and goodnesses, inshallah. May make that happen. And in the last moment, let us die when He has seen us in our best form and that we are in the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakumullah khaira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you.